Story 1.
My younger sister, 19 female, is getting married to her 36-year-old high school teacher in a few days and everyone seems okay with it. She graduated a year ago and they told us they were dating, almost immediately after graduation. I was shocked and angry, but everyone around me was happy and supportive of them. The teacher divorced his wife 2 years ago and started paying attention to my sister. He spoke to her after class regularly and paid special attention to her studies. I thought this was weird and talked to my sister about this, but she told me he was helping her because she was the best student in her class, which she was. A few months ago, only a few months into dating, they announced that they were engaged. I tried talking to my parents about their age difference and stuff, but they didn't want to hear it. I talked to my sister, and she told me she is happy and that she loves him. We live in a small town with a tight-knit community and everyone else is supporting their marriage. I'm feeling useless right now and I am angry at myself. I was unable to protect my sister. I feel like I failed in my duties as an older sibling. I hate everyone around me. How do they not see what's going on here?
Update.
The marriage happened. I contemplated not going to the ceremony, but I didn't want to hurt my little sister, so I went reluctantly. My blood was boiling throughout the whole thing. Everyone who came to the ceremony congratulated them. I couldn't even look the teacher in the face because I was so angry at him. I hated the whole thing. I'm leaving this town tomorrow. I had some interviews lined up and got selected in one. It's in a city and I'm moving tomorrow. I can't stand these people. My parents think that getting married to a good guy with a stable job is the best thing that could have happened to my sister, and my relatives agreed. He groomed her. Why doesn't anyone else see that? I wanted to scream at everyone. When I told my sis I was leaving, she cried. I reassured her and told her that I wasn't angry at her. I made it clear to her that she could contact me anytime under any circumstances and that I'd be there for her. I bought her a phone and told her that I'd talk to her regularly. I tried not to antagonize anyone because I want them to reach out to me if anything happens. It was very hard to do. I came very close to fighting several people. My sister was a star student. I always thought she would go to a big college and become someone significant. But now, she's going to be a housewife. That thought is destroying me. I wasn't harsh on her because I'm hoping that she wakes up soon and I want to be there for her when that happens. I want to support her and see her full potential and I'm wishing it happens soon. Edit. I've told her not to have children until she's sure. She has a contraceptive implant and I told her not to get it removed for at least a couple of years. I told her to tell me if anyone ever pressured her to have it removed. I really hope she follows my advice. Edit 2. I'm just checking the comments and the amount of people defending the teacher is insane. People like you are the problem. She was groomed since she was 16. Why can't you people see that? I wouldn't have any problem with her choices if she wasn't coerced into them. Him being an older man isn't my issue here, him being her teacher is. Also, I don't think that being a housewife is bad. What I don't like is that the choice of something more is being taken away from my sister. As for the phone thing, my parents did not allow my sister to own a phone. She had to use the landline if she wanted to talk to people. That's why I bought her a phone.
Update.
I wanted to share an update on my sister's situation since it's been a year and the situation has changed significantly in a positive way. Since the marriage a year ago, I've made it a point to talk to my sister regularly on the phone that I gave her. A few weeks in, her husband started pushing her to be in a traditional wife role, which created a wedge between her and her friends. But I made sure to keep in touch and to visit her once every month. Her husband did not like that, but he tolerated it to keep up appearances. To deal with my frustrations, I joined a gym and started working out. Luckily, my boss at my job turned out to be a great lady who listened to me and gave me a lot of support and advice. She told me I could call her when I needed help and became my mentor and an older sister I could lean on, while also paying me well. Some months into the marriage, her husband managed to domesticate her completely. She stopped going out almost entirely and had very little independence, and he tried to start separating my sister from me. However, because I kept a good and consistent relationship with her, he wasn't able to do it. A couple of months ago, he started hinting to my sister about wanting kids, but I kept repeating to my sister that she should not have children until a few years into marriage. Last month, he told her directly that he wanted children, and my sister told him that she wanted to wait. He started pressuring her to get her contraceptive implant removed, so last week, I went back home to talk to him. I always try to be polite to him whenever I visit their home so that he doesn't have any ammo to try to separate us. During conversation, I brought up that he was pressuring my sister to get her contraceptive implant removed. It escalated into an argument with him saying that he had a right to have children with his wife. When I didn't back down, he got frustrated and took a swing at me, which didn't connect properly. I didn't hesitate in punching him back in his face. He fell backwards and started howling in pain. I wanted to do that since this whole ordeal started and it was satisfying. I think him hitting me was my sister's wake-up call. He called the cops and told them that I assaulted him. Fortunately, I make sure to record everything whenever I visit their home. I use my Apple Watch for this and it's a great tool for stealthy audio recording. I called my boss and told her about what happened, and she promised to send a lawyer just in case. When the cops arrived, my sister took my side, which surprised her husband. With me being a woman, and with the recording, the cops also took my side. The lawyer arrived after that, and I told her husband that I was taking my sister with me. He tried to protest, but the lawyer warned him that I would press charges if he stopped my sister from leaving. He reluctantly let her go, and she has been staying with me for the last week. My parents were furious when they found out that my sister had left her husband. They did not seem to care that he hit me, probably because I stopped talking to them. I am still talking to my sister about what she wants to do, and we'll probably start divorce proceedings in a few days. Her husband and my parents have been trying to call and get her to come back, but I've made sure that she doesn't talk to them without me present. Throughout the whole thing, my boss has been super helpful and has been giving my sister advice about what she could do next. I know that I'm super lucky that my sister managed to wake up so soon and that I've had support from people like my boss. Throughout the whole of last year, I was worried about how my sister was going to end up, but I am elated now.
My opinion. I'm glad that it is going well. What I can recommend is to contact a union. They often do investigations on such relationships that started a few months after graduation. That is the first thing. Check if it works like that in your state. This man feels like a typical groomer. I don't really understand your parents' priorities here. As she was the best student, she may try herself in college. Why getting married and become a housewife with such man? Nothing against housewives though, but there will be options to become one if she wants to later, but now she might lose other opportunities. I'm glad you're around and your sister has your support. Let her try something else in her life and then decide what she wants to do with her life. Story 2.
My 19 female sister, 18 female, has a much older boyfriend. My brother raised us. How do I tell him about this carefully? A bit of background might help you understand my situation better. We grew up without a father and our mother is very sick and struggles with drug issues. My older brother, 25 male, practically raised me and my sister. We still live in my mother's house, however she may as well not even be there. My brother lives with his girlfriend on the other side of town. Well, here is the issue we have. My sister recently brought an older guy over to our house to watch a movie. He's around 40 years old. I mean, he seems nice enough on the surface, but the age gap and the fact she only recently turned 18 really rubs me the wrong way. Not even sure how he could bring himself to go into an 18-year-old's house. I've spoken to her about it, and she said they hadn't done anything sexual except kiss, and she said she isn't in any rush to. She reckons he loves her, and she loves him. She's never gone past kissing before and is much more innocent than I was as a teen. My sister hasn't had a boyfriend before, and whilst she isn't stupid, I feel she is easily manipulated due to her personality and naiveness. I went over to my brother's house the day after whilst he was at work and spoke to his girlfriend, 25 female, about it. She seemed disgusted by the whole thing but was also concerned about telling my brother. Whilst she agreed it had to be done, she said it was important it was done properly. She agreed not to do it without me. Bit of info about my brother as I feel it's relevant for this. He's an amazing guy to us. He went above and beyond, sacrificing his teenage years to make sure we got what we needed. Even if his means were less than legal. His first trouble with the law was at 19 for stealing to pay for my school dance trip. We never wanted anything, we always had presents under the tree and a nice meal at Christmas thanks to him. Always made sure we had gifts on our birthdays and would take us out to dinner even if he couldn't afford to order anything himself. We rarely missed a school trip as he'd always find a way to make it work. His GF has told me that he puts a little bit of money aside each month for our eventual wedding dresses. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better big brother. I know all the pressure had an effect on him. That's the kind of guy he is, no sacrifice for us was too big. He's a big guy who regularly spends time in the gym after work. He's also associated with some rather unsavory characters. Whilst he has never ever so much as raised his voice at us, I've seen him go absolutely ape at some people before. A notable example is when I was 17, my then boyfriend smacked me, and he was completely enraged. If my then boyfriend wasn't also a minor, I reckon he would have killed him. He's very protective of us and I think sees us as his own children and his responsibility. It is because of this that I doubt he will act calmly about a full-grown man grooming his little sister. Whilst the possibility of anger worries me, his girlfriend was also worried about him getting sad, feeling like he didn't protect her as well as he should have or feeling like a failure. She said we need to be really careful about how we tell him this. My little sister asked me not to tell him, but there is no way I could do that. Plus, his GF already knows and is going to have more loyalty to him than to my little sister, so he's going to find out regardless of what I do. She said tonight when he gets home from work is probably the time to tell him. I guess what I'm asking is how do we tell him? I wish none of this had happened, I'm so anxious about the whole thing. I really don't want my big bro to be hurt and I don't want him to do anything stupid to the guy and get himself in trouble. I'm really lost here.
Update.
Thanks for all the comments giving input in such a short space of time. Only have about an hour and a half until he'll be home, so I'm glad I have some more input. I'm going round to his house to have dinner with him and his GF. I'm going to let her lead the discussion. I think this is best because she sort of knows him better. I know that sounds stupid, like how I could not know my brother best, but they've been together for 5 years and whilst me and him are close, their relationship is much more intimate, and she'll know how his mind works, etc. I think she'll know how best to discuss it. Is that makes sense? I'm unbelievably nervous about how it's going to go though. My sister is currently sleeping over at a friend's house tonight and I've confirmed with the friend's older sister that she's definitely there. I think this is better than her being at our house and rules out the chance that the creep could be at our house, which would be a recipe for disaster. Hopefully I'll be able to let you know how it goes later tonight. Wish me luck.
Update.
Well, here's the update some of you were interested in. Sorry if it's a bit long and maybe rambled, it's been a rough evening. I got to his house an hour or so before he arrived and went over a game plan with his GF. She was going to lead it and I was going to put some input in where I thought it was best. He came home in a pretty good mood, and we chilled for a bit before sitting down to eat. We said that we'd do it whilst having dinner, but neither of us seemed to be able to bring it up during. I could hardly eat my food, I was so nervous. Once the plates were away, we sat at the table and his GF began. She mentioned that sis had a BF and my brother originally seemed quite pleased, not having had a BF as something that bothered my sis in the past. Although this happy mood took a turn pretty much instantly when she mentioned his age. He just sat there staring at his glass for what felt like eternity. I said that they've not been together that long and haven't done much. His GF told him that we've only known for a very short space of time and told him as soon as the time was right. He began speaking, he sounded calm, but I could tell he was not happy in the slightest. He demanded to know the guy's name, etc. I don't actually know this, I'm sure he said his name, but I can't really remember it. It was a generic English name, think Jack, Dan, Ben, something like that. His GF was on the verge of tears at this point. Don't think it was about my sis and the guy, but maybe about how upset my bro seemed. He looked heartbroken. She asked him not to do anything dumb and I said a point that some of you commented about acting rash and pushing them closer together. I said that it was best if he didn't contact sister yet or over the phone, and he reluctantly agreed. We sat in silence again for a bit, just drinking. It was like the air was so tense you couldn't speak, no one wanted to be the one to break the silence. Occasionally I looked up and towards my brother and he just had this look in his eyes, like he was starting straight through everything. He looked devastated. I was struggling not to cry. After what felt like ages but realistically probably wasn't more than 10 minutes, he got up and said he was going to shower. He gets pretty dirty at work. Once he walked into the bathroom, his GF got up and told me to watch some TV and have some dessert whilst she went with him. I got myself another glass of wine, drinking age is 18 in my country, and sat down watching the TV. The walls in his apartment are thin and I turn the TV down a little to try and hear. I'm a nosy git sometimes. From what I could gather, she had got in the shower with him, and I could hear them talking a bit. At one point I'm almost certain I could hear him crying and her comforting him. I've only heard him cry maybe 3 times ever. He said stuff like it's his fault and he should have tried to spend more time at our house with her recently, and perhaps she would have asked him for some advice before getting involved with this creep. His GF was assuring him that it wasn't in any way his fault, and no one saw it coming. I heard him raise his voice at one point, but I don't think it was directed at GF. They came out maybe a total of 45 minutes later and I pretended I had been watching TV all the time. Brother stepped out onto the balcony to smoke, and he was talking on the phone for a bit. He normally takes calls around anyone, so this was a bit weird. Also it's about 2 degrees here at the moment, so it's not like he was enjoying the weather. GF told me about how he feels. She said he's taking it hard but doesn't want to show it in front of me. They're going to speak to sister about it in some way or another, but don't think they've really planned it yet. GF is going to lead the chat though, I think, and it will just be those 3. They said I shouldn't sit in too, at least not right at the start. GF has made bro promise not to do anything without talking to her. GF first, but honestly, I've never seen him look so angry. When he came back in, we didn't speak about it again. We watched TV and drank a little more. We were all snuggled up on the sofa, brother leaning on his GF's chest and me leaning on brother's stomach. He had his arm round me pretty tightly like he used to do, which was nice. It reminded me of the old days when we were kids. For a moment I almost forgot this whole situation. I'm staying in their spare room tonight since we've been drinking. I could hear them speaking a bit ago and when they were in bed, and he still sounded pretty down. Whilst this situation makes me really uncomfortable and down, I can't really imagine how it must be for him, which makes it hard to know what he's thinking, and I don't know how to help him. Honestly, don't know what to expect tomorrow. Feel a bit better now, we've told him, and it didn't go nuclear, but still pretty anxious about the days to come.
Update.
Me and sister are back at my house. Brother and GF still haven't spoken to her. Think they're going to be waiting until the weekend when we're all meant to be meeting. Just as I thought things were on the up and up, it seems things have just got more complicated. Noticed sis was a bit upset when she came home last night, and after some pushing, she told me what was up, and it kinda broke my heart. This is obviously a bit weird for me to type out. I don't really want to imagine it. She said that she and Creep had been drinking a bit the previous night. She had a fair bit and was rather drunk. He ended up convincing her to try some more stuff. She said that they were making out and undressing, but it ended up pretty much him still dressed and her not. Which IDK is slightly weird to me. He convinced her to try oral and was rather rough, holding her head down and such. She told him to be gentler and he did for a bit, but then would go back to rough. She said that once it was done, she started putting her clothes back on, but he wanted her to stay bare whilst they watched TV even though he was clothed. Which she did for a bit despite feeling uncomfortable. He had work today so they didn't stay up late, and she ended up coming back here instead of sleeping over at his house. She feels sort of dirty and used. I tried explaining to her that it shouldn't be like that. It should be enjoyable for both parties. She seems to think her experience was just down to it being the first time and that she will get used to it. This is clearly a major red flag, but she doesn't seem to think so. Blinded by young love, I guess. Haven't told brother or GF about this. As far as sis is aware, they don't even know about the creep. Not sure if I should tell them or not. On one hand, it might help them formulate a better argument when they do speak to her on Saturday, but on the other hand, I don't think my brother would take that particularly well.
Update.
Hello guys. Should be the final update. As someone suggested in my previous update, I spoke to my brother's GF about what I wrote about in it. She wasn't pleased, but we agreed no need to tell brother, although later my sister actually told him herself. Saturday evening me and my sister came over to theirs to have dinner. I was pretty nervous about how it was going to go, but I think after reading all your comments I was pretty prepared for it. Once we'd get settled, GF asked my sister if she could talk to her for a min. GF talked to her about sex, how it should be, safety, relationships, that sort of thing. I wasn't there for it, as thought sister would be more inclined to be open if there wasn't a blood relative sitting there staring. GF came out and got my brother and he went in there for a bit. Once I was just me outside, I eavesdropped a bit and heard a lot of tears. It seemed my sister was already aware how it was a weird relationship and wasn't entirely happy, but was too embarrassed to admit that the first boyfriend she'd managed to get and bragged about had turned out to be so horrible. At this point I went in and saw my sister crying in my brother's arms. She couldn't seem to stop. I'm guessing all the stuff she was bottling up about this whole ordeal was finally coming out now she had someone to speak to. My brother also looked like he was crying a little. Turns out what sister had told me about their previous encounter wasn't completely accurate. Whilst it was true it was just oral, supposedly he had been much rougher than she told me and called her nasty names, but she's adamant it wasn't rape. My brother looked really uncomfortable as she was talking about it, which I can't really blame him for. It must be absolutely horrible hearing your little sister speak about experiencing that. By this point it was obvious he was crying, but my sister couldn't see as she still had her face buried on his chest. His GF looked pretty sad too. My brother was rubbing her back and telling her it's okay and that he wants her to feel free to talk to him anytime about anything. His GF still thinks he's beating himself up about his perceived failings, and I can't imagine the new news is going to do him many favors in his head. At this point sister seemed to be aware of his tears and sat up and they hugged for what felt like ages. I reassured my sister that everyone comes across bad boyfriends at some point in their life and it's nothing to be ashamed about. We talked a bit more. She said she was glad she could end it with the weirdo without feeling embarrassed and never wants to see him again. She said she wishes she could just forget the whole ordeal. She admitted to GF in their earlier discussion that it wasn't like an age fetish thing, he just made her feel special for once, which I've read as a common tactic of these creeps. We talked a bit more, but since it was Saturday, I can't remember any more specifics than I've already mentioned. After we were done chatting, I went out onto the balcony to smoke, and when I came back my brother and sister were on the sofa watching a film and his GF was cooking. She was curled up with her head on his chest and appeared to be happy. I'm hoping she was feeling the feeling I had the other week of being loved like we were children again. At one point she texted the creep that she didn't want to see him again, etc. At first, he started texting almost begging, but then it turned to quiet nasty words and threats. He started calling and calling. Eventually my brother answered and stepped onto the balcony with her phone. I don't know what was said, but I heard some shouting and I can't imagine he was very friendly. We spent the rest of the evening relaxing and watching films. GF sat there playing with my brother's hair and I don't think sister moved from practically on top of my brother for the whole evening. She started crying a bit later and he just held her and rubbed her back. Could tell my brother was still not feeling great about the whole thing. I think he blames himself for my sister ending up in the situation she did. Even now, 5 days later, I can tell it's still bothering him, but he tries to hide it. He's just not very good at it. Not sure what I can do to reassure him about this. We're both still staying around here and will do for the foreseeable future, maybe permanently. Unfortunately the creep knows where we live, and they don't want us going back there. The creep still texts and tries to call her. She has some stuff at his house that she needs to collect when he's back from a business trip. My brother doesn't want her to go and is sending some friends I mentioned previously in her place. I don't know exactly what he said to them, but I think the creep is going to have a nasty shock when he opens the door expecting to see my poor little sister and is greeted by a couple of lean, mean-looking 25-year-olds. What they'll do to him I don't know, honestly, I don't care.
My opinion. Your brother is a strong man and really is a father for both of his sisters. He doesn't need to feel like he failed in this case. Everyone can become a victim of such a creep. People always expect others to act normally, but not as inappropriate as this man did. Everyone is vulnerable to some degree, doesn't matter how the person was raised or educated. His girlfriend is worth mentioning. She done a good job preparing your brother and helping him to this conversation and supporting him after. And you, of course. You handled this situation in the best way possible. You were there for both your brother and your sister. You all should be proud of yourself. You handled this situation very maturely and thoughtfully. I wish you all the best, hope you will keep such close relations with each other and live a happy life. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe on my channel.